Not yet. Well, welcome everybody to our final lecture of regional geography of Southern Europe. I hope everybody is doing well in these still troubling times. Very nice to see an audience of 13 students. Also, thank you for watching it later. So, final lecture, final talks on regional geography and probably much beyond regional geography per se. And one of the aspects that we have always been pointing out here is that regional geography, to some extent, encompasses a number of domains linked to human geography, mainly economic geography, much less physical geography, but also a lot about urban geography, a little on spatial planning, and also a little within territorial governance, and more on the governance as an overarching concept, bringing together actors, institutions, communities, including the citizens. And I'm very happy that some of you have been reaching out regarding our mini essay, and I truly cannot stress this enough to deliver that mini essay. Those will represent your thoughts on a specific subject and is your key card to get through the regional geography. We reach here now the final lecture after going through a large number of topics without having here a textbook to follow. So everything has been prepared from scratch from the first lecture. And this will be, of course, incorporated in the exam principles, so to say, that I will not be complicating your life at all, and I will try to simplify the questions on exam, and then you have the chance with a mini essay to really get through. And today we talk about, to complete the previous lecture, on mission-oriented policies and what regional futures will entail. And these will go very much in line with the previous lecture on sustainability policy, sustainability approaches, practice, depending very much the context we are approaching the subject. Let me see if I have something that I shall share before continue. I guess those are the points. We have been also covering a lot of questions regarding the essay. They are all on the OLAT platform. I believe that we have been able to cover all the possible questions that you may that you have, and eventually we'll have, now that we are approaching the date of the exam already on the 9th of February. And here a very interesting diagram, graph chart that I came across just this morning, and basically contradicts substantially part of what I shared with you in last lecture. Well, I tried to point out that we, since the beginning, since the first lecture, that we have to embrace this critical thinking towards the subjects we are exploring. And I mentioned to you in the last lecture that some of these governance arrangements, we can call these international agreements, that bring together high-income countries, also so-called developed, and low/middle-income countries, also called less developed countries or developing countries. Mostly in the global south, they follow a policy and an academic discourse, and they go hand in hand along or throughout the years. One follows the other, and most of the cases academics follow the trends also within the policymaker, and policymakers also follow the trends. But then this graph reveals something very interesting. We have talked about this earlier on, these different agreements supporting sustainable development, and then now all other agreements that came with some more specific measures to mitigate climate change, reducing CO2 emissions, helping to operationalize the Millennium Goals, and then now the Sustainable Development Goals, which we call them as framework, and still a lot of areas that can help to operationalize the SDGs. And then interesting to see that, okay, all these came through the past decades, a lot of commitment, a lot of engagement involving countries all around the world. But then the scenario in terms of the global temperature change goes actually in a completely opposite direction. A lot of calls for reducing emissions, mitigate climate change, use renewable resources, try to embrace economic approach that consume less fossil fuels, yet the temperature on Earth has been increasing substantially to the dangerous levels. Yet we still have these international conferences, the climate change conferences, coming with an agreement with a lot of fuzz and a lot of mass communication and mainstream media covering. Yet the latest metrics or statistics reveal a dramatic scenario of the increase of the global temperature. So embrace critical thinking when you look to a certain subject, even this is very micro scale within a specific community dedicated to farming a specific crop or a fruit tree, for example. It's always important to embrace some critical thinking, and I have another graphs further on. And this one also shows very much in line with the earlier one that we have this first around the commitment of high-income countries engaging within climate adaptation, climate resilience, trying to operationalize the Sustainable Development Goals, yet they are the largest contributors to the climate, of the so-called climate breakdown, as this author here specifically addresses. And then we have these low-income countries suffering the most through extreme weather events, floods, droughts, and high temperatures affecting the communities, sometimes forcing them to resettle elsewhere, such as in sub-Saharan Africa, only contributing with 8%, which is substantially below the contribution of the United States and the European Union, 28 now 27 countries. And yet we have here a concept that is coming through with some capacity to influence regional policies. For example, is now influencing the European agenda in terms of how to mitigate these grand societal challenges. We also talk a little bit about this in the previous lecture, and then here we can encapsulate this grand societal challenge affecting our time as a number of domains regarding energy within sustainable cities, climate change, global health, food, water, energy nexus. It is a nexus that that all our life on Earth depends on. We all need food, we all need water, as members of the as members of the humanity, and the digital transformed world, which also entail a number of challenges that is important to think about when we are talking about rising of population density in some parts, in some geographies, while others are suffering from shrinking of the population, and the class of elderly is increasing, and aging population also calls for example, a different approach in terms of digital transformation. So we have here the mission-oriented innovation policies. That's somehow a core concept, somehow still theoretical one, that is currently influencing part of the policies, and it's important that you go then out there to embrace your professions or your studies, and you have some knowledge about the current concept impacting the European agenda in terms of addressing the grand societal challenges, mission-oriented innovation policies. They are here to respond to these grand societal challenges. They try to identify the issues, articulate problems, and come with very specific measures to address, for example, production, the distribution of goods and services, and ultimately also the consumption patterns. And this is certainly very difficult to address. I mentioned earlier, it's very difficult to shape our own behaviors as a consumer. So the overall goal of the mission-oriented innovation policy is to contribute to this reframing of the organization of the economic/social landscape, and if we include the consumption patterns in this context. In doing it, this mission-oriented aims to somehow reframe again this economic growth and seeing it more as a direction towards prosperity. So not as an ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is not the economic growth, but that's the way to achieve the prosperity. So still acknowledging the importance of economic growth, but tries to do it slightly in a different context, in more integrative and strategic oriented approach, and acknowledge the importance of experimentation. Also, we have been underlining this quite a lot. Investment and risk taking. So it's important to take some risks while developing such a type of innovation policies, both from the side of governments and the side of the private actors. It also emphasizes here the importance of having this co-creation, co-evolution, sometimes co-governance, so cooperation within a larger governance domain, bringing different institutions, public and private, together to try to shape the markets towards a more sustainable patterns. And how this is operationalized here in practice is how to address these grand societal challenges, or how to contribute to operationalize the sustainable development goals. And also, again, that's the point here. That's the point important while writing about regional geography. That is valuing local experiences, valuing local knowledge, valuing local assets, and valuing local know-how. Also how local communities at the bottom up have been dealing with some specific issues. It's important to value these bottom up experiments to then address the overall globalized challenges. These all required also consensus building. So then we have these mission-oriented innovation policies entering the policy agenda, of different institutions worldwide, and also the academic research. But then this idea behind the mission-oriented innovation policies has been in place for quite some time. These authors, the authors I have been citing, Mazzucato mainly underlines, for example, the Apollo mission. So for the mankind to be able to really accomplish this mission, they required innovation in different domains. So not only on the sector of aeronautics or space exploration, but also within robotics, textiles, also nutrition, and other domains within production and distribution of goods and services. They had to evolve, so that we call co-evolution. So for one sector to evolve needs the evolution of others. So then we call co-evolution or co-innovation processes. The same happens, for example, if we talk about energy transition, quite popular in the discourse of politicians these days. Energy transition, for example, the German example, to truly implement and get through the energy transition requires investments in the grid, for the distribution of the energy. And if we think about supporting the electric automobile sector, it also requires stations to recharge, better to say, recharge these old vehicles. So to get through in one, so the mission is to support the energy transition, means that supplying the market, supplying urban regions, supplying Germany from non-renewable resources. This requires the evolution and innovation across a number of those domains. As you may also expect, this requires a commitment, a consensus, experimentation, risk-taking of a number of actors, public, private, civil society, and communities at large. And one fundamental aspect across these principles of the mission oriented is that that is important to work with some specific objectives in mind. Okay, supporting energy transition, putting the man on the moon. These are very specific objectives, more than talking about let's say eradicating poverty as one of the sustainable development goals, which is still an objective but is to some extent vague. Okay, then we have the targets helping to operationalize, but then the mission oriented, but then the targets per se, they will not have the capacity to help to eradicate poverty, though. So we may need some specific missions to really a step after step, maybe through experimentation in some communities, to truly contribute to that to the operationalization of that sustainable development goal. So we need to really develop some specific objectives, and the missions will have the process of the mission will then develop it and interact with all these actors through to achieve these specific objectives. And basically is about doing the things in society, production, consumption, within the economic and social landscape, doing the things different than the so-called mainstream economic activity. And fundamental is about using resources in a sustainable and effective and efficient manner as possible. Sometimes when we mention here the question of bottom-up experimentation, also links very well with a concept that is dear to economic geographies, that is the serendipity, that is, so along this process of trying to accomplish some specific objectives, and with the experimentation, researchers, policymakers, those that are in charge of the personalization of this mission oriented, they may find ways of getting there that they were not planning to, that were not planned before. So then we call about this finding something that can turn to be good without really planning or expecting to get there. So it also works with this. That's very much here to the principle of experimentation. Still open to criticism, but I think this is something very interesting, and probably now in our daily lives we also go along with our different tasks with a lot of experimentation in our, when we are writing our essays or answering some questions in the exams. So the mission oriented is not only a vague concept out there, influenced by some sort of visionary academics, but is now embedded within policy making, for example, within the agenda of the European Union, and it aligns or somehow helps here to build the pillars towards what now I call the region futures. And to me, these regional futures, being this about Southern Europe, being being regional futures within the regions, within regions of regions within Southern Europe, or within regions within Europe, they will be about green economy, circular economy, and other concepts that we'll talk later towards the end. So again, this is expected that through this mission-oriented, government, supranational entities such as the European Union will be able to develop strategies to support these regional futures, to support a green economy, eventually create different type of jobs, and also sustaining job creation and maintenance through a more green oriented economic activity. And this also reflects somehow the integration of innovation policy within the overarching agenda of territorial development. So politicians and decision makers, not only necessarily the politicians, they have been also embracing the importance of innovating in different domains of society to be able to address these grand societal challenges. And I think the next slides and the diagrams I have will help to underline some of these key points. And what you need to know about this mission oriented is that it exists to try to address these grand challenges and help to operationalize the development goals, and works with very specific objectives in mind. And to really address this grand challenge, different projects are needed. So somehow we have missions and submissions and sub-submissions helping to accomplish the overarching mission here. It requires this, again, this culture of experimentation, risk-taking. These are philosophical principles of mission-oriented, when the overall aim is to stimulate a range of developments and the co-evolution of different sectors of activity. Basically, this is the framework that Mazzucato presents here on how mission-oriented innovation policies actually work in practice. So the grand challenge, different missions with specific objectives with these clear targets, and then mission projects or missions that will help to address the intermediate level, the mission one, and eventually at the end address the grand societal challenges. an important aspect to underline here, still again, better developed framework by other authors, and to put the right name on the right comment. This also requires the so-called system innovation. This is fundamental. System innovation is fundamental to truly make mission-oriented innovation policies a reality, or making it with a true impact at the ground. This requires co-evolution and co-innovations. And what these authors underline is that to address some of these challenges, different sectors of the society, they need to be involved. Policies need to be adapted, infrastructures need to be rebuilt or built from scratch. The supply of energy into our cities needs to be completely rearranged. So a number of interventions are required. Sometimes it's not possible to truly reshape all these infrastructures out there without revising policies, and all of this takes long time. So missions oriented is really a marathon and not a sprint. Sprints, somehow they may exist within this mission oriented project, so little experimentations that help to get there, but then the overall process certainly takes a lot of time. So system innovation, and this is very much a core concept within an understanding of the economic geography, is that this system innovation is fundamental to help to make this mission-oriented a reality. So we cannot really achieve the specific objectives of one mission without revising and reshaping an entire system that has been in place for a long time, can be called mainstream, for example. It's important to really transform this system within an overarching perspective, and this requires bringing again actors together, requires a number of governance arrangements, the engagement of different institutions, supranational institutions and national governments as well, that need to work together to really achieve this mission oriented. And an example here of this system innovation, try to disentangle the concept of the system innovation. We have the case of the electric car sharing model as a system on innovation. So we have now these electric cars out there in our cities, but they are only a reality because of these changes within a specific system, and then this is not necessarily important within a regional geography context. This incremental innovation or disrupt innovation. So they are a reality out there in our cities, because then a number of business models, they have been developed to support the electric car, the repair and maintenance very specialized in electric cars, the car sharing platforms online and physically, with a parking space out there in the corner of the main squares in our cities, payment plans, leasing plans, and the legislation, financial legislation supporting all of these, insurance mechanisms as well. They all needed to be now reframed. So as you see, a number of entities already coming together to make it a reality. Then we also have a number of innovations, which can be incremental or completely disruptive within the technological sector. Geolocation, electric vehicles per se, the manufacturing of them, and the components that then supply this manufacturing process, applications, online mobile applications, and then more disruptive, the development of the supply of the energy to these cars, so hydrogen or other forms of energy. Also innovation in terms of the instructors, innovation again within the regulatory framework, with higher taxes for other type of vehicles and less for the electrical ones, and also changes in the culture and values. That's why I underline the idea, if this was, for example, a lecture within economic geography, I will probably all be here to underline more the reframing of the economic landscape. But here within regional geography, as geographies, we are concerned about different domains. So I call about this organization of the economic and social landscape, because to also make this electric car sharing a reality, a number of values also needed to be somehow reshaped. Then we need an acceptance of the citizens, and we also need need a different understanding about the perception of ownership in some countries. You know that owning a car is gives some sort of status. In other countries, having a car actually means a completely opposite, not something as taken as a luxury, but as an element that goes against the principle of sustainability, damage the ecological systems, etc. So also impacts here a number of social domains. Here, a more probably a less known sector here in terms that somehow brings this system innovation, and it still a lot to go until it can enter in this case, the food system, using seaweed cultivation to support a number of sustainable development goals. And these authors develop an interesting topic here. We can analyze this through the mission-oriented innovation policies. So we have here the partnership of different actors, the business side, the governments, and academia. They were able to develop ways of using or reusing seaweed to the point of making it not a farming practice but a cultivation, and then while if this is then developed forward, and then again this requires a lot of time to be operationalized. Ecosystem service will be supported, different type of ecosystem service. And if you ever wonder about the truly meaning of ecosystem service, we have here a nice division. They are regulating, supporting cultural and the provision, and while satisfying or securing this ecosystem service, the seaweed cultivation will have direct benefits on the climate change, will be a form of supporting life below water, eventually contribute to the food systems worldwide. Their benefits assessed by the academia are positive for the health and well-being, and will be also a part, will also contribute to operationalizing the affordable and clean energy. And while operationalizing these sustainable development goals, other goals will also be able to partly get operationalized. So again, here a nice example. Another example, something that we can take, so the seaweed cultivation is probably a reality, or could be a reality in the regional futures of Southern Europe because of the geographical location. So here we are, geographies, thinking about the regional context. An issue certainly more globalized, that is affects a number of countries worldwide, except those landlocked countries, is the mission here of reaching a plastic-free ocean. Certainly very dear to some of us, and that we are concerned about pollution of the seaside, of coastlines, and the water resources in general. So the mission of a plastic-free ocean. So let's take this plastic-free ocean as the mission, as Mazzucato explains in her publication. And then she brings this earlier theoretical framework, then you remember 2 or 3 slides before, to the operationalization of this goal. So the overarching, so operationalizing of the mission, the overarching mission here is to contribute to cleaner or clean oceans and seas and other water resources. That's the grand challenge here to address. The mission, which, so we can also take the clean oceans as the overarching mission, and then we have some of the mission here of the plastic-free ocean. That's something that we can assess. Some statistics or metrics tell us that this is quite dramatic currently worldwide, and if is not addressed within a specific time frame, the ecosystems linked to the oceans, they will certainly collapse. So something that we have here, something targets. So we have targets to address. So we have measures to that need to be explored and addressed as well. And having or reaching this mission of plastic free will certainly have will be of societal relevance, will be of importance for different type of activities within the economic and social landscape. With certainly substantial benefits also to mitigate climate change. These are ambitious somehow submissions and goals within the missions, and we have here the mission projects that they will help out to get there. So then we will need to improve some technology supporting the recycling of plastics. We certainly need to develop digesting mechanisms to digest the plastic that will be collected. We certainly need a system, a more efficient system to collect the plastic in the oceans, and also to prevent the plastic to reach the final destination of the ocean. So we need different projects, and they are only possible through cross-disciplinary work involving academia and policymakers, going much across the border. It doesn't make sense if Spain addresses plastic while Portugal does nothing to do that. Just here some examples, not necessarily realistic, just in hypothesis terms. So it's important to think about these subjects across boundaries. It's important to have really a common understanding of the importance of having clean oceans and what this represents for society and the ecosystems. And also it's important to value the bottom-up solutions. Maybe some communities southern Portugal, they have been dealing with the plastic for a long time. Maybe they know how to address it in that specific community. Why not try to extrapolate, to somehow globalize the lessons learned from these communities? Maybe they will be helpful to have here another step, another project that could help the overarching mission. So I believe that this is what I'm convinced that is a diagram that really very much exemplifies the goal of the mission-oriented innovation policies. Again, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. To really get there, to achieve the targets, really have to think about 10, 20 years ahead of our time. It's really not possible to have clean oceans in 1 year. We may have part of a coastline clean in 1 year, and this will contribute to the overall mission. But then we have to think about this in the long term, and we also need to think about how to engage the policy sector, the governance structures across countries and across borders. We also have to improve somehow the communication from the benefits of having clear oceans to the communities, and having this broader understanding of the missions. And missions, they are not only about preserving ecosystems, valuing specific resources that can contribute to the food chain. They cover different subjects, and here worldwide we have the mission of cancer prevention, which is very important for the health and well-being, so for the operationalization also of one of the sustainable development goals. Different countries here working or engaging with different approach, some of them more technological, some of them more social, but with a mission of preventing cancer to spread within the society. And this is also part, I mentioned to you before, also part of the agenda of the European Union, that by 2030 they want to improve the lives of the European citizens, and for that purpose cancer prevention is one of the goals. And then the other examples here also underline this mission. We have here the case of South Korea, with a more focus on the development of robots. We have the case of Germany, more interested in developing the technology sector, but still the mission, how to get there, varies across countries, but then the final mission is a common one: cancer prevention, the same as with the clean oceans. And also others countries engaging in different kind of missions. And the goal of this is to underline to you that again, this reaching or these mission innovation policies, they happen, they are rather complex. The diagram earlier on the plastic-free oceans is somehow rather simplistic. This one is somehow more complex, which underlines to really they have some specific missions. To get there, they need a number of arrangements. They need to bring different agencies different decision makers together. They need to develop, the countries need to develop a number of plans, programs. They may have a strategy and a vision based on this mission, but they need to develop a number of action plans indeed supporting these mission projects, the how to get there within this overarching approach of mission-oriented innovation policies. They are embedded already in frameworks of different supranational entities, such as the European Union. They have been working with these principles, philosophical principles, or more conceptual principles of the mission-oriented innovation policies. Here, only two examples, and I try while preparing for the lecture, more specifically on Southern Europe, to find what is going on in Southern Europe about embracing these mission-oriented innovation policies. And I was only able to find these two examples, one covering farming activities, so more economic component and the use of natural resources involving these countries in Southern Europe, including Portugal, Spain, not all in Southern Europe, but Portugal, Spain, Greece, and Italy are part of this PRIMA project, this partnership for research and innovation in the Mediterranean area. And the overall the missions within this project is management of water, improving farming systems, and valuing agro-food value chains in this country. So they work towards one specific goal, that is improving the economic growth within the Mediterranean area towards sustainable, within the sustainability principles. And here they focus in their prime needs, managing water, which is also can also be taken as a grand societal challenges, improving the farming systems that per se will contribute to value the food chains. More specific, detailed examples within this context. So they acknowledge the importance of mitigating climate change, how unsustainable agricultural practices are actually damaging the environment and damaging the ecosystem services. And then these two projects, co-funded by the European Union, they aim, one, to improve the farming of olives in the southern parts of Europe, and another one to improve the overall the water management within the aquatic resources also in southern parts of Europe. So these are only the two examples I was able to find about that can be positioned within this discussion of mission-oriented innovation policies, and they very much relate with, again, they are within this nexus of food, water, and energy nexus, an important domain, part of this grand societal challenge we talked in the beginning. To summarize here, with the last 2 minutes of these parts, missions, they should be well defined, very specific objectives. Then mission does not compromise only research and development in one specific sector, in one single sector, but requires innovation and research and development across sectors. It's important to somehow to build a portfolio of innovation processes and outputs to truly support the accomplishments of a mission. They require the investment and the dedication and the consensus of a number of different sectors of the society, from the public to the private. And then, as the examples underline, to truly get that, is important to reframe policies, reframing ways of dealing with economic domains. It's important to also change behavior. So it's important to lead with cultural and social values that are very much rooted within the society. And within this context, this is one possible exam question. He probably slightly elaborated, then is my role here to disentangle it a little bit. It tries to underline why it's important, why this mission-oriented can play a role, for example, in paving the way to alternative regional futures. And here, of course, then I would expect you to underline some of the aspects of mission-oriented, that truly meaning of it, what the aims, what it involves, and the requirements, very much based on this list of examples here. So you have the slides at hand to answer this question, and with the goal of helping to operationalize the sustainable development goals. And then you can use hypothetical examples that you may develop in your mind, or that in your perspective could help to operationalize this sustainable can help to operationalize the sustainable development goals through a mission-oriented innovation process. And then we'll take a break here, and next we'll discuss, as I also promised, sustainability transitions in Southern Europe, and then regional futures. And I think we'll be covering the 40 minutes. So we are all invited to take a break, and you are also invited to stay and ask me some questions if you have any at the moment. And for that, I will then stop here the recording. All right, so we are here for the final part of this lecture number 11 with some statistics on the sustainability transitions in Southern Europe. Again, very challenging, and probably here a bit less con for the exam, because I'm not very much sympathetic about asking about statistics in the exam. That's not the question. The point is more about bringing concepts together and try to define one, and while you try to bring another one as a way of addressing another one. For example, talking about missions while talking about sustainability transitions, you may talk about missions as a way of supporting these transitions towards a more sustainable society. But anyway, let's go through some of the figures I have here for the southern part of Europe, to have to grasp a little bit of what is going on in terms of sustainable development in the south. And we have here a not so dramatic figure of the exposure to air pollution in southern parts of Europe. We have Portugal, Spain, also Italy with the light among the bluish colors here, which they represent less exposure to air pollution. This in comparison, for example, to East Europe, with registering here high levels of exposure to air pollution. Of course, here it is important then to understand how they came to build this map. And understanding what are the particles actually contributing to this air pollution. That's not going beyond. I'm not going into detail in that. I want to go just more having this general picture of the southern parts of Europe. One, air pollution, and then it's again very complex to bring different, or bringing the same kind of statistical indicator to different countries. So I'm bringing those that I was able to find, and some of them, they are more here to also work as a call for attention to you as a citizens of the world, and also to myself as well, as some of these graphs, I'm seeing them also for the first time. And we have here, when we think about, and we've been talking about a lot of the economic landscape within Southern Europe, we had lectures, or 2 lectures focused on the economic geography. We have here the main activities contributing to the greenhouse gases intensity, and we have quite dramatic figure here for electricity, gas, steam, and air conditioning supply, here contributing even with a decrease in the last in the years between 2008 and 2018, still the major contributors to the emission of greenhouse gases, following by agriculture, forestry, and fishing activities. So sometimes that's why aspects of changing behaviors, thinking about the cultural values, they impact dramatically the current situation of climate change, and they contribute to environmental degradation, such as the usage of air conditioning, for example. Yet, if I bring here a bit more critical thinking in this context, I see very few debates on media, for example, about this specific issue of having some small equipment, let's say, compared to a large scale agriculture system compared to the air conditionings, yet I still see very few discussions on how some small changes in our households will affect positively the environment in general. Another aspect here to cover is to think about the quality of the soil, and as the soil is a fundamental resource to support the food systems in Europe and elsewhere in the world. And we have the soil health and food in connection to the food systems is one of the missions of the European Union, or one of the missions within the Horizon Europe, along with the cancer and with cancer prevention and climate change mitigation. And we have here some in southern part of Europe, some more dramatic figures in terms of the soil loss by water erosion. And this water erosion is very much influenced by changes on the landscape, on the physical landscape, deforestation in some part, urbanization or new buildings that occupy vacant land that was devoted, for example, for green spaces, or could be devoted to green spaces. This contributes to water erosion, and we have here some more dramatic figures mainly in Greece, and also in Italy, a bit less in Portugal and in southern Spain. And this in these cases, the urban expansion is one of the main reasons contributing to this soil loss. What within soil management we call soil stealing. That means covering the soil with cement or asphalt, for example. This basically kills all the ecosystems, or kills all the possibilities of the soil to contribute to the ecosystem services or to the food chain. So that's important to have the soil as a mission in order to counteract the effects of the soil sealing in Europe. And it's interesting to see that soil is now taken as a mission within the European Union. And these are the documents I came across documenting to some extent the sustainable development and sustainability, much less sustainability transitions in southern Europe. So we have more the documents covering different aspects of sustainability, energy, transportation, and environmental statistics, for example. So it's still challenging to really disentangle the meaning of sustainability transitions in southern Europe or in other parts of Europe. We will probably need to go into detail into the statistics of each country to really understand how this transition is taking place. However, because it's somehow a new concept entering now the discourse, the European cohesion policy discourse through the Green Deal, for example, is still very the availability of statistics remains very vague at this extent. So I bring from these documents, I bring only some highlights here, and I need to change this to be able to check the statistics there. And this one underlines here underlines that biofuels and renewable and biofuels, they have been conquering some territory in terms of energy production in the European Union, 27 countries between 1990 and 2018. Yet we still have high consumption of the solid fossil fuel, although with a decrease in the recent years, still within the top of the primary energy productions, closer or still the nuclear heat also at the top still in 2018. And then I just read this morning in the news that the European Union wants to recognize, maybe that's a better word than acknowledge, nuclear and natural gas as sustainable sources of energy production. This has already been contested by some countries. So I was only able to read the highlights. I read those highlights, then I need to explore these further, but then they want to acknowledge or recognize the nuclear and the gas as a part of the sustainable resources. So this this, then we have, if we put all these agreements together, of these international agreements coming from climate change conferences, we still see here a high consumption of the fossil fuels, and then we move to a data here more specific within the more specific for the global for the southern parts of Europe. And then some element that I would like to underline is the renewable energy production in 2018, and we have here Portugal leading the way, very much because of the physical location, the geography, the physical geography of the territory that is helping to foster the renewable energy in the country. Of 97% of the share of the total production coming from natural resources. Very interesting to see here that Malta is leading the way with 100% of the energy coming from renewable resources. And also interesting, very few cases where we have a statistic bringing the European Union 27 countries and candidate countries here together with these within these indicators. But then we have the Western Balkans also here in terms of their share between the nuclear energy, the fossil fuel, natural gas, and renewable energies, which we still have a number of countries without any nuclear energy, such as Greece, as well Portugal without any nuclear power plant, and we have here Slovakia leading the way in terms of using nuclear energy for the production. Using nuclear for the production of energy. So different speeds, same unions, same guidelines, same kind of overall documents, somehow working as a guideline for the European member states on how to develop and how to support sustainability transitions. Yet overall message, we have different speeds within the European Union concerning the usage of renewable energy. So I'm only giving you an example of one here. Will be nice to have a comparison, for example, but then that's for covering the renewable energy as a part of the share of energy production. That is not, I was not able to find such indicator. In terms of imports, so despite that now some of the countries are using their own resources, renewable resources, to produce energy, the imports of energy are still very heavy in the balance of the European Union in the overall terms of the European Union 27 member countries between 1990 and 2018. The most of the in terms of fossil fuel, the natural gas was the highest resource within the balance of imports of the European Union, and still here, and the crude oil also still at the top of the main imports within of the European Union, with an increase also because of the improvement of the infrastructure somehow supplying European countries with natural gas. This led also to an increase of the imports from natural gas, and then we'll see from where the natural gas is actually coming from. The other fossil fuels remain more or less in the closer with closer value. So crude oil, natural gas, the main imports of energy products to the European Union. And interesting to see here, if we think about also the current geopolitical discussions fulfilling the mainstream media these days. We have here Russia, for example, at the top of the suppliers of the European Union in terms of natural gas and hard coal as well. And also interesting to see very distant countries such as Mozambique in southern Africa supplying Europe with hard coal. And then you can think about the environmental impacts of these globalized supply chains of fossil fuels. And for those more interested in geopolitical discussions, also interesting to see the current discussion involving Russia, Ukraine, and Europe and United States, and then assess the values or the statistics in terms of natural gas imports from these countries. This is again for you to go out there and talk with your colleagues. So if you are confronted with such a discussion, I hope then you are able to come and underline the examples of what you have learned in regional geography at the University of Kiel. These need to bring together different concepts, and while the moment you are confronted with such a chart, for example, you have to be able to disentangle it, such as this one here, which again underlines, I have to keep moving here the part, which underlines how shaping social behaviors, how shaping consumer behaviors of ourselves within the society is very challenging, because we have here as the energy consumption by transport mode. Again, in the European Union, we have the international aviation taking the lead in terms of the sector within transportation consuming the largest amount of energy. So although a lot of discourses have been developed in the sense of highlighting the negative impacts of the aviation on the environment, that contribution to climate change because of the emission of gases, still they are still leading the consumption in terms of energy, followed by the road, and in a much lower level we have the rail that still in a pattern of decreasing the consumption. So the technologies involving the rail transportation have been improving quite significantly, to the point that they are now even consuming much less energy in comparison to before. Then we have some some very interesting examples in Portugal, but mostly in Spain, with the improvement of the rail infrastructure. So instead of using crude equipment, they are now converting most of their infrastructure into electricity supply of the rail. So, and then this probably we will hear in the next years, part of the discussions which we could place within regional futures, the discussions on how to expand, how to improve the rail transportation within the European Union. Again, different speeds. We have a Central Europe with well-connected countries in terms of rail, and moving towards the south, still a lot of deficits in terms of cross-border connections, mainly cross-border connections involving different European Union member countries. Focus more on the indicators in terms of the renewable aspects. We have here Portugal again taking the lead within the global south, within the southern parts of Europe, close to the European Union target for 2020. We have Sweden and Finland leading in terms of using a renewable resource for the production of energy, still lagging behind or in comparison to other countries, even Bulgaria, Greece, Italy, and Spain. Still a lot to do in this context of using natural renewable resources for the production of energy. Because a figure only stating one specific year, bringing together different years, certainly we will have here a scenario of evolution of energy supplied from renewable resources, yet that's the figure I was able to come across. Still below the European Union target in terms of the using of renewable resources in transportation. We still have, again, here in comparing the southern countries of Europe that we have been analyzing throughout this module: Italy, Spain, Greece, and Portugal. Portugal still here taking the lead, yet substantially far from Sweden, for example, very close to the European Union target. But this also leaves us enough room to research, to think about, to eventually take some action to do a lobby near policymakers to improve the energy production from renewable sources or renewable resources across Europe. Next slides covering only specifically these 4 countries in the southern part of Europe, with a lot of statistics here covering the energy, transportation, and the environment. Here I underline mostly the greenhouse greenhouse gas emissions in these 4 countries. We have here Portugal with below the average of the European Union in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. And again, we bring together this indicator of taking the lead in terms of using renewable sources for the production of energy. And then now I bring also an interesting interesting diagrams that I was able to find, covering some of the operationalization of the Sustainable Development Goals, yet in a more in a less specific manner that I very much appreciate, but it's still very difficult to find such a data. So we have these 17 goals. It's very also challenging to memorize all of them. That's why I bring the slide here, and we have here diagrams showing how these countries in Southern Europe are evolving their operationalization. So we have here Portugal progressing positively in comparison to the European Union in some of the goals. For example, the goal number 10 on energy, on reducing inequalities. And if you remember how Portugal is leading the way, for example, in terms of integration of women in the economic landscape. So this certainly contributes to operationalize the sustainable goal number 10, still remains to be addressed. The sustainable goal number 13, which is very curious, is the climate action. So more needs to be done in Portugal regarding the operationalization of the sustainable development goal on climate change, and still the others remain in progress. Some of them already ahead of the European Union average, others still lagging behind in terms of the counterparts in comparison to other countries, other European Union member states. We have Spain now with a greenhouse gas emissions below the European Union average, and then here somehow a more sympathetic figure, which is curious to compare with the earlier slides showing that Spain remains still lagging behind in using renewable resources. They are already ahead in the number of operationalization of some of these sustainable development goals. So Spain is progressing towards these SDGs already in a better than the European Union, for example, in terms of the goal number 4. That's the one that the diagram here indicates as progressing substantially further. The goal number 4 better than Portugal. The goal on the climate change, also on the food hunger. Of course, this needs then to be disentangled to understand the real meaning of how they are getting there, what kind of measures they are actually applying to support the operationalization of these goals. We have Greece here with an interesting figure for the greenhouse gas emissions above the European Union share. So something also to consider about, mainly in terms of what type of economic activities are actually contributing to these greenhouse gas emissions. Is aviation, is transportation, is agriculture, and still they are progressing in the number of goals, yet below the European Union average in this regarding. They are indeed progressing in almost all these 17 sustainable development goals. Is still a lot to do until they can reach what is going on in the European Union and as a whole. Italy, one of the strongest, we mentioned this before, strongest economies within the European Union, with a gross domestic product higher than the other countries, yet successfully is being able to control also the greenhouse gas emissions, remaining below the European Union share. And here again, a figure not so much sympathetic to some extent. They are still lagging behind in terms of the inequality and partnership. Then this can also be disentangled from different perspectives. Maybe they are less keen to cooperate. That's the call of the Sustainable Development Goal 17. Reducing the inequalities very much related with the labor force as well. They are progressing in the other goals, already progressing substantially in the goal number 16, which now I don't remember the meaning. That's why I put it here. Peace, justice, and strong institutions. Indeed, this also what I can comment in this regard, and they have been been implementing a number of territorial governance arrangements, mainly giving, you remember this from the first lecture, giving emphasis or placing emphasis or giving decision-making capacity to the regions. This can, to some extent, be interrelated with that. In terms of other goals, they are progressing, yet below the European Union, which overall, what these four diagrams show in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals in Southern Europe, these four countries are progressing, some of them better than others in some specific goals. So they are here, certainly the territorial governance, their local values, the institutional organization also impacts how they embrace the operationalization of these sustainable development goals. These are only figures given at the current time. Will be very interesting in 2 years coming back to such a figures and make a comparison, for example, and understanding how, to what extent, which is something I'm really curious about, to some extent this funding coming, so-called resilient funding on something like that, coming from the European Union to support the recovery in the post-corona period, will impact the operationalization of the Sustainable Development Goals. An exercise that will be very interesting to do in 2 or 3 years ahead, not only in Southern Europe, but also in other countries of Europe. Somehow, a summary of what we have been talking about here in this in the past 2 lectures. So, key take-home message that these environmental challenges, grand societal challenges, they surely cannot be addressed, cannot be tackled individually by only one country, only one member state, only one institution, or only one policy. They require the engagement, the partnership, collaboration, going across the borders, and improvements in terms of different policy domains as well. Systematic change is needed. So to truly help energy transition, for example, is important to have innovation within the distribution of energy, having stations to supply the automobile sector, for example, developing infrastructures to facilitate the commuting by bicycle, for example. All of these need to be placed in the same agenda. So talking about sustainability transitions is bringing together different agendas, different environmental policies, different transportation policies. That's the only way we can truly reshape the current way the economy and the society work. The European Green Deal, yet to be seen. The true impacts of the European Green Deal is very ambitious in different domains, covers climate, food systems, biodiversity conservation, industrial strategy, circular economy. I will touch upon this. So calls upon this innovation, co-innovation involving different sectors of the society, is built or has been built very much in line with this idea of the mission-oriented policies, and to me, they will determine the futures of regional development in the European Union. And all of this also requires this experimentalism, risk-taking attitude, and certainly the role of entrepreneurs, of young entrepreneurs like yourselves, that are expected to come with novel ideas to support these regional futures, which we are expecting, or all of these documents tell us they will need to be sustainable and equitable in this. And these two words, they entail a lot of other meanings. What is out there, the just transition from the European Union, is there to support equitability within the regional futures, making sure that the sustainability transitions are actually developed in an equal and fair or just manner across the European Union member states. Somehow reinforces the cohesion policy. And what I want you to know from this cohesion policies, that is the main European Union policy to reduce regional disparities. You really need to know this definition. It's important for regional geography in Europe, and also you may be confronted with it later on in your career. Is one of the main cornerstones in one of the main policies within the European Union to reduce these regional disparities, is supported through different kind of policies, such as the place-based. The smart specialization is also intended to reduce these regional inequalities and receives funding from the cohesion policy. Now the personalization of the European Green Deal receives funding from different mechanisms, such as the cohesion policy one, and also other funding, supporting more research, supporting more innovation, and the just transition to support an equal and fair distribution of the gains of the sustainability transitions across the European Union. Some highlights in terms of sustainability transitions and regional futures. To these sustainability transitions, they will need to have a structural impact in the society. So means that not only changing the way one specific sector, the industrial sector or the agriculture sector, for example, work, but requires an overall structural change on how doing the things, doing production, consumption, and distribution in a manner that is certainly more sustainable and use resources more efficiently. So a structural change will is somehow required to really shape this sustainability in future. It needs to be just. That's why the European Union came with this just transition funding to support this equitability within the sustainability transitions. Requires very much like the mission oriented, having a vision or a very specific, well-defined goals and objectives to truly get there. And these visions, they need to be they need to be neutral. They need to value the local assets. They need to value elements that are fundamental and they've been the pillars of the European Union, that is building a common understanding across the European Union regarding, for example, environmental policies or in economic developments. Very much here a summary of what I have been saying in this context, and this diagram underlines one of the first take-home messages, that to support sustainability transitions, different policy domains need to be involved. For example, here to support this innovation. To truly support innovation, environmental policies, important to continue supporting research and development, to promote experiments. So I've been talking about experimentation, and I don't want you to go out there and be convinced that this is only my viewpoint. The European Union states precisely, as well as Mariano Mazzucato with the mission-oriented innovation policies, the need for experimentalism within this context, missions, networks. So working, as we addressed this during the break, thinking about that to address one grand societal challenge, we need to address also smaller micro level challenges within our communities, and then try to build here a strong web of relations and of results supporting the overall grand challenges. And the time is scarce now. Let me use the final minutes to step here into regional futures. And this, the idea of these slides is more to give you an idea of what is out there, and then if you want to bring them while, for example, discussing sustainability transitions in different contexts, you will be prepared, or at least you have an idea about the concepts that we have been talking about. A very interesting diagram slide here, and how I call it, picture, that I came across very recently, that somehow covers here a spectrum of years towards 2030, and now probably these concepts will come through and will impact the way society and the economy are organized. We are already talking about degrowth. We are already talking about post-growth policies as well. We are not talking much about the well-being economy. Some of this is expected to come in the next year. So regional futures will certainly underline or will be about some of these aspects, which in one sentence they mean reframing the current economic policies in an alternative manner, in a manner that is uses the resources more efficiently, and understands that economic growth is not the prime, or should not be the prime goal and other domains are fundamental or should be considered also at the forefront of the development of societies and not only economic aspects. And this diagram of the European Green Deal, I think here works some sort of as an octopus, touching upon different possible domains on how regional futures will be developed. They will certainly be developed based on principles of the circular economy. They will be based on the conservation and the urgent need to conserve biodiversity and ecosystem services. They will be based on how to minimize the food chains, how to convert these global food supply chains into more regionalized supply chains, bringing the production of the food we need in Europe to Europe, instead of supporting these overall globalized supply chains, with the need of coming with mitigation measures to avoid a complete collapse of the economies that depend of the European market to place their agricultural products, for example. And we certainly be based about the principle of equity, and then leaving no one behind will certainly lead the way towards regional futures in Europe. And you will be hearing certainly and reading a lot about deGROW. deGROW has been in place for quite some time, and the message here that I want you to take with you is that deGROW works as a critic to the current economic development hegemony of the society. Means deGROW, the meaning of deGROW is that the way the current economic landscape works should value other elements, rather than only emphasizing the economic performance of the societies. So first, initiated as a kind of activism, as a critic, it entered the academic research and is now entering the policy domains. Yet to be seen the true impact of this deGROW. Along with deGROW, post-GROW, and also other deGROW policies, they need to enter the discourse of politicians and policymakers to truly disrupt the current GROW-dependent economic systems. So deGROW and post-GROW are about creating this disruption on the current economic systems to make it less dependent from economic performance and economic GROW levels, and embracing the other elements that are fundamental to really achieve prosperity within the society, health and well-being, for example. Another topic that you will be hearing certainly a lot in regional futures is social responsibility, and maybe something new to you, spatial responsibility. Means social responsibility involves more private actors that incorporate, for example, companies, international organizations, that incorporate responsibility within their own agenda. So they have corporate social responsibility plans to support employees, to support nature, to contribute to continue developing their profit-oriented activity, but then give back to the community or to the environment, for example. And then spatial responsibility, maybe a novel concept to you, is about having a number of networks of institutions in one urban region, for example, that come together to support the development of that urban region. We are talking about public and private entities that somehow agree with one vision. We can tell they agree with one mission, that is to improve, that to support the development policies and strategies involving, to some extent, physical planning as well of that specific urban region, because they understand that having offering quality amenities, green spaces, quality infrastructures, quality education infrastructures is essentially for them to continue attracting, for example, talented workforce, and continue being an attractive region in this globalized competitive arena when it comes to attract foreign direct investments. Certainly part or a concept that you will be hearing certainly quite a lot is slow innovation, which somehow can be underpinned with the principles of mission-oriented policy, or a way to help to personalize. This basically means is somehow bringing here a concept to a point that I've been underlying quite intensively, that is valuing the local instead of valuing speed, valuing the speed and the fast environments, is valuing the slowness, is valuing the intensity of the relations that exist in smaller communities, for example, towns or smaller cities, for example. And so in one hand, we have these more advanced cities, metropolitan areas that are capable of attracting labor force, and they are within this fast-paced development. The slow innovation underlines the value of innovation within smaller communities, because they work more strategically, they rely in solid knowledge, and also tends to be more sustainable in their outputs. So slow innovation can certainly be an important approach for these lagging regions of Southern Europe, by valuing, for example, local markets, by valuing products that come from smaller communities. So again, underlining here the value of bottom-up experimentation, valuing valuing smaller and micro level innovation, and valuing local communities. And the final one, probably one more familiar with, and which certainly will be a cornerstone of regional futures, is the circular economy. That is going from this linear distribution, this linear organization of the economic landscape, from production to consumption to waste, to keep these products within the consumption cycle for as long as possible, by reusing, repairing, remanufacturing, and recycling. There are fortunately already some examples in terms of within the government side, in terms of policies, and also in terms and also examples in circular business models from the private sector. We have the case of Airbnb, still controversial for different reasons, but we have these rental spaces as part or as part with these circular business models. We have the British Sugar that uses waste waste as an input product as well. And we have, for example, the Caterpillar that invests quite a lot in terms of repairing and upgrading their equipments. The same goes for Mile and their products. They are produced to last longer in the market, so somehow they bring together the idea of slow innovation, to some extent of more products that last longer in the market, together with offering services to support the reuse and the repairing of these products. We have cases of leasing tires, for example, provided by Michelin. The same in terms of optimization and then the customer-oriented services within Philips that also help the products to continue or remaining in the market for a longer period, instead of having this linear of production and consumption and final step, that's the waste. And I conclude here the lecture within the time with two questions, possible exam questions. Of course, this will be then revised, and I will bring the references here also to help you to grasp the question. They will be translated by myself into German as well. So we will have an English question and a German question, and these are all already copy and pasted into the All Art group. So go there, have a look, and I can only wish you all the very best into your future, and hope to see you all in the exam, and then we will continue our interactions via the same platforms. I really hope you all have enjoyed the regional geography of Southern Europe. My sincere apologies if something went wrong or not within or aligned with your preferences, and I have done my best, taking into consideration that I'm not using any textbook, but only building the lectures and the slides based on ongoing discussions, last minute statistics as well, and then yeah, I can all the best, and let's stay in touch until our exams and all the next time. So all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good